was 12 and a half years old, my mama put $10 in my hand and told me to look after myself. I did as I was told.
You've had quite a year with Catching Dust, The Boys, everything. I mean, watching this
Mhm.
movie, this was such a journey to go on. And before we get into the story, I have to say, as someone from the South, you really nailed the Southern accent.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, thank you for saying that. Honestly, that actually means the world because I worked with this amazing accent coach named Jerome Butler, who deserves all the credit. But it was the first accent I'd ever put on, and I was terrified because for me, I know if I'm thinking about the accent, I'm not thinking about the character, and that is paralyzing. Like then I can't play the character. So I spent so many hours working with him leading up to the film and during the filming. Every single day on set, I spent 45 minutes in preparation, like in my trailer, doing exercises, just because I was so anxious. So thank you, because it's not a little thing. Like I said, if I get that right, or if I feel like I'm getting it right, then I can play the character. I cannot be present for Geena unless the accent is something I'm not even thinking about. And that's what I wanted to get to. But I had very little time to prepare for it because I was going off of one film into another. So that means the world.
Yeah, it was really amazing. I mean, people watch this movie like, I know somebody like this. Like I could probably walk on the street and find somebody who talks like
That means more than you know. That means so much. Thank you.
No, that's amazing. Well, now that we've talked about the accent, I just had to get that out of the way. This was definitely a movie where I also think a lot of people will relate to it, probably because so many women have felt trapped, physically and mentally,
Mhm.
maybe in not in
Mhm.
this particular situation. But how
Mhm.
did you approach playing a character in a very dark and uncomfortable experience?
Look, I think that one of the things that we learn as we get older, and I'm not saying older, I'm saying literally like I'm 30. I learned between my 20s and my 30s. So you can be young, but you learn more and more that there's a darkness and there is a psychological state that you can reach that you may not have thought capable of yourself, right? And I think we all go through that. We all go through our own relative version. We can speak to someone who's 7 years old who says that the worst thing they'd ever gone through was like something that we can't relate to because it doesn't match the gravity of what we've been through by the time we're 25. There are varying degrees and varying versions, but we all have our moments, I think, when we're confronted with a level of pain that we didn't think was possible and we didn't think was surmountable. And I think that is something that portraying as a woman specifically and this dilemma one feels, and also the identity loss one can feel is so important to see in female characters. And I think that for me, it was about playing a character who was paradoxical, right? There was strength within her, but she was staying with her abuser. But we have to portray the abuser in a way that's nuanced enough so that it's not black and white. You have sympathy for him, but for her, it's like she finds her strength, but she doesn't overcome everything within the film. And it's not tied in a neat bow. And I think the point is that for all the reasons you can go into these low moments, all of those reasons do not need to be transcended to find your strengths. They can still be present. You just learn how to metabolize them in a different way. And I think that for myself, like movies helps me feel less alone growing up, and they still do when I see someone going through something specific. And I think it's amazing that I can read a script and play a woman who grows up in West Texas, completely different upbringing from mine. I'm from New York City, and we still relate to her. And I think she's so specific, but that's a really beautiful thing. So it can make us feel also a little bit more connected. And I think that's a really, really important thing to provide.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful perspective on this movie. And honestly, I'm really glad you said it's not like a black and white situation because hardly
Mhm.
any times these situations are. And I think naturally, as humans, we want to know why someone would ever stay in Gina's situation with Clyde.
Mhm.
And if the answer is so complicated to understand. Did you ever find
Totally.
yourself questioning that? Like, what kind of upbringing did she have to make her the person
Yes,
she is?
yes. My process involves a very granular, if not neurotic approach. And that means that I know exactly where she came from.
Mhm.
I know exactly what every year of her life entailed because for me, I might not even use it when I step onto set, but it allows me to breathe the life into her that I do think is present. And I do find these little moments with her that are behavioral, that are super subtle, that someone might not pick up on, but are the exact direct result of something that happened when she was younger. So, you know, it's of my belief that if you're an actor, you're lucky enough to kind of be forced to confront certain things that are present in human psychology on a scientific level, right? So let's look at her relationship with Clyde and her unwillingness to confront who he is, but her love for him at the same time. And why is she so in love with this man who is treating her this way? And what happened previous to this whole movie that would have led them to fall in love like this and not be able to cut their ties? First of all, we had to build a relationship between us. And one of the most important things was really like between Jai and I agreeing that the love between them prior to us picking up on where we do in the movie was very present. They both came from very, very, very dysfunctional households, and her specifically, she had never been in a situation where she felt loved. And so not only that, but she felt like she had exclusively been in situations where her only way of getting things was by being a waitress and being objectified, and that's how she made her money. And so when she meets someone who loves her so fiercely and provides her with the kind of love that she's been starved of, even if it's not the kind of love that she should ultimately be getting in it, and he's unfortunately and heartbreakingly unable to express his love in the right way, the extent of his abusiveness is correlating with the extent of his love for her. And she loves him. And for this to be the only love she's ever had, to confront the finality of that is just earth shattering. So she won't, I think it's hard for any of us to do that. It's comparable to someone confronting fallibilities in their parent. And that's really discomforting because that's who you literally needed to survive. She needs him to survive. That love has been the hallmark and the foundation to her feeling okay and safe. And ironically, it becomes the opposite. But so that's the answer. It's like every single justification to her situation and her feelings and her breaking out of it found in her backstory.
Yeah, I mean, so many people say like your upbringing kind of affects what your personal relationships are in your
It's the
adulthood.
first love relationship you have.
Yeah, so that makes so much sense. But another thing that was really interesting to me about the movie was kind of her relationship with art, and her as an artist. I mean, when we first see her doing art, it's like mainly black and white sketches of her husband, and then she's introduced to abstract art, and she's like, I don't understand this. This makes no sense to me. How did you interpret her journey as an artist, finding herself, and how it, correlates with her journey as a woman?
I think that art for her is, many of us have our version of whatever she had in that moment. But art is her catharsis. And I don't even think she's aware of it. In the beginning, she's drawing these portraits of Clyde. And I think that she has physical needs that match her emotional needs that we as women have previously not really been able to discuss. It's like, okay, well, our physical needs are fundamental to our well-being because they do, for the very reasons that women are kind of dismissed, like, oh, we get attached when it comes to physical things. Well, yeah, there is a physical and emotional relationship there. So when you see him like saying that he needs to like go shower when she starts to kiss him and deny her of that intimate moment, you can see that that is a moment that's symbolic of her having her needs not being met on every level, right? So the way she's drawing him, I don't think that there's I don't think it's a coincidence that she's drawing him in a state where she hasn't felt like he's in a vulnerable state, right? He's in the state that he would be if she was getting what she needed. There's a reason she's drawing it, and I don't think she's aware of it. Her subconscious tends to find itself out on a page or via writing. That's like her version of journaling. So I think that these are images that she's drawing of him vulnerable, and they're images that reflect the Clyde she is clinging on to. And that is cathartic. And I think upon looking at them in retrospect, when she meets Andy, she's able to realize that. Even the first thing he says about art, I think, is that it's like something that he says something along the lines of it, art being your soul painted out or drawn out onto a page, right? And I think as soon as she learns that, she's able to implement that concept onto her form of art. That's a key component of her being able to look inward, which she hasn't been able to do.